Hey, this is Curious Mike. I'm here in Florida. It's like 75 degrees. Back home in Boston, my wife and kids. Hello, where it's 20 degrees. We're going to do something different today with our podcast, Microschooling Journeys. It's just me talking. Part one of this story is 5 years ago. I want you to picture Katie. She's wearing peace earrings, like the peace earrings, Birkenstocks. Professionally, she's a little beaten down. She told me, she said, quote, I was wondering, did I want to continue to teach? Back in the day, public school is never what she had really wanted. And she was working at a Montessori school, which in theory was what she wanted. But she felt like the school wasn't really what Maria Montessori, that old Italian lady, wasn't really what Montessori was about. She said, it's wealthy parents who treat us, the teachers, like daycare workers, not really like valued teachers or professionals. And I said, oh, what's an example? And she'd be like, oh, they'd say like, we're doing such and such an activity on Saturday. But she was just told that. And, she'd think, well, what about my own kids? And there was no extra pay. The contract said other duties as needed, but it was really this kind of sense of entitlement. There were fundraisers, and Katie told me the teachers would wonder, like, where would the money even go? We don't know. Katie and the other teachers, they would never see the money in like the form of new stuff for the classroom, which is where you would think fundraiser might go. And, certainly not for teacher pay. Anyway, all of that led her to think, I don't know how much I want to keep doing this. And her kids at the time were a teen and a tween, and Katie's a mixed race family, she said. Okay, pause for a second. Now it's Mike, the editorial Mike, offering a little commentary. I don't want to go too far down the DEI track, but it is important to this story, so let me hit it briefly. I think right now, 2025, blue states and cities, certainly Boston, Massachusetts, are having their own reckoning with DEI. Is it going too far? And there's this kind of intra-Democratic Party fight. That's not the topic here. But in very red places like Nassau County, Florida, DEI doesn't mean, I think, what it means today broadly. It's a bit more, to me, as I'm absorbing it, it's like what 2005 was like in Boston. I think here, what Katie means when she uses that phrase mostly just means tolerance. So it means that like a 4-year-old would just say, yeah, I have two mommies, and nobody would freak out. Like the adults would be very welcoming and teach the other kids to be very welcoming. And there wouldn't be like weird, snarky behind the scenes parent conversations. And similarly, that you would purposefully want to bring together people from different social classes and races. So I don't know. End of Mike commentary, but I feel like I have to tell you that to bring in the story, right? We're right by the Amelia River and St. Mary's River, and that's kind of the only blue on the map is the rivers. So Katie would want to work at a school where parents of all types feel quite welcome. Okay, pause on Katie. Tania, she's also an early educator. She grew up in Cuba, decides to be a teacher. They've got like a 5-year training program. Cuba's got some pretty long, extensive training programs. And this is for early education. She gets married, she has her own kids, and finally it's like the Cuba story, like, my kids have no freedom. We got to get out of here. So she leaves her two kids with mom. And the journey is to Ecuador and then to Guatemala, and there's buses and there's boats and there's payments. And finally, She gets to the US where there's a special deal, as you may know, for Cubans, special immigration deal, but she starts at the bottom. Tania gets a job in daycare, and to her eye, it's like a free-for-all. Like the training she noted for daycare workers was like 40 days. She's like, I was trained for 5 years. Like there's sort of a different view here. And she works her way up the ladder. For a while, she becomes the assistant teacher to Katie, then becomes a full-fledged teacher. And Tanya's struck in part by the lack of clinical understanding and professionalism of many early educators. Like from her point of view, it's tough to do it the right way with the 3 and the 4-year-olds, so they're learning. You're not just trying to avoid catastrophic injury where they don't push each other off the monkey bars. And so they're both in the same professional place of, I kind of like my work, but I don't necessarily like the setting. And Katie says to Tania, hey, maybe we should start our own school. End of part 1. Part 2. Let's rewind the clock now back to 2017. And I'm Mike, chatting with Matt Kramer. I've known him a little over the years. He has left his job as the co-CEO of Teach for America, right? The biggest nonprofit in the education space, arguably. But the politics there were getting crazy. And instead, Matt left, and 2017, has just he founded this nonprofit network of progressive Montessori microschools called Wildflower. And when I chat with him, he's got that energy that you see in people when they're just going deep in a new area and they freaking love it. Like the sparks are just popping out of his brain. And he's discovering all this stuff about Maria Montessori back in the day, and he's trying to reconcile her vision with everything he's learned in his long stint at Teach for America, which uses a lot of analytical tools to try to understand their impact. And he's thinking about modernizing Montessori and technology, all these different things. So Wildflower, in Matt's view, he wants to identify teacher leaders, people just like Katie and Tania, and he wants to help them cross the chasm and actually launch their own little school. So that happens in this story, right? Katie and Tania say, let's do it. And they get connected with Wildflower. And so Wildflower, particularly a woman on Matt's team named Danielle, is helping along the way. First part of their journey is Tania realizes, she's told, oh, guess what? You have a non-compete in your contract. It's like classic contract, 6 pages long. It's so dense. I mean, who of us read it? I probably have signed 3 digital license agreements this morning just to navigate my computer. None of us read these things. Hers has a non-compete. Okay. A normal non-compete would just be like, you can't steal our customers at the current fancy private Montessori and bring them to your little microschool, which I think would be totally reasonable clause. But they say she can't even participate at all for the 1-year period in the founding of the school, irrespective of customers. Like even if she sort of says, no poaching agreement, I'll never take any families from your school. That's not enough. They want to block her from working with Katie, and they succeed in doing that. Moreover, they say she's not allowed to teach Montessori. Like, I don't know. I feel like, I would have put, some kind of A-list attorney in the local newspaper on this case. I got so angry, honestly, just hearing about this. There's a role for non-compete. This is not the role. You can't tell someone they can't be an early childhood educator anywhere when they are. Or this had a 45-mile radius or some crazy thing. So we don't know what to do. You could imagine concerns about legal stuff, outgunned, certainly on the legal side. So Tania, for a year, works as a teacher like 45 miles away. That was her commute. Okay. Um, so, and part of me just wants to do a deep expose on this school, but like that's just Mike talking. Kati and Tania have moved on, but I imagined Sarah Bullock playing the villain, playing against type, playing the villain in this movie. But okay, we're letting that part go. She's out of commission. It's Kati on her own. But Wildflower is kind of there for her every step of the way. So she's got to find a new building, and it's not working with this realtor. So she gets a new one, and then a new one after that. And like finally, the fourth one, bingo. So then they have a building, but it needs a renovation. Wait, there's a septic system issue. And Wildflower helps her get a pro bono attorney. That's a big deal. And they help her build a budget. They helped her, or they did build her website. And so Kati gets to keep calling Danielle. Here's what's going on. And Danielle's like the guide. It's almost like Montessori for adults. Kati does the work like the children are supposed to do, the self-discovery. And Kati really did it. I mean, she put in the work. She went to the public hearings with the community, the Rotary Club type stuff to build up a local network. She even took like a small business class at the SBA. I was really impressed. So Kati opened her own doors, but Wildflower is there as the guide and really helping her understand startup. And she was so pleased with that when I spoke to her. And so Tania waits out her 1 year non-compete. Finally, the two are reunited. And a few years ago, they opened the school. Okay, part 3. Yesterday, I visited Rain Lily Microschool. And it was totally charming. There's 36 kids there, which is their full capacity. And it's happy and it's vibrant. And it's Tania and Kati and 2 assistant teachers. And I'm watching playtime. And it's great. I mean, you can just tell there's a difference. Like everybody knows this, like how the 3 and 4 year olds interact with each other when they're playing. And there were just so many nice moments. And, at one point, like instead of stacking the rocks, like 3 year old starts to like, oh, I'll just throw the rock. And like he gets the redirect, the perfect redirect. And it worked. And then I was watching, classic circle time, like 2 lead teachers take a bunch of kids and, reading a book out loud and talking about it, all that stuff. Again, when you see it done well and all the kids are engaged and all the little distraction stuff gets patrolled in just the right kind but firm way, I mean, that's just magic. And Prue and I, like, we would have immediately, if we had visited this school and it was near us in Boston, this would have been our preschool, like easily. So the Rain Lily Microschool website, it says who they are. I read, quote, "We are an intentionally diverse community of learners with equity and inclusivity at the core of our guiding principles." So again, in blue states, this is unexceptional. In Nassau County, it probably sticks out. In typical pure pay Montessori private in this area is probably 20 grand a year. At Rain Lily, it's a sliding scale. It's 12 grand down to about 7 or 8. But the cool thing is there's various subsidies, which really allows these different social classes to enter the school. There's a VPK, virtual preschool voucher. There's a school readiness voucher. And what I've talked about on the podcast before, for kindergartners, you can use the education savings account. Similarly for special needs students. So there's a lot of ways to bring down the family cost for this in Florida to almost nothing. And they're getting like a beautiful quality experience at something they can afford. Some families are putting in $100 a month. That's what they can afford. But on the back end, Rain Lily is making it work financially. And I was just pleased to see this. So with that said, the work is exhausting because basically what Kati and Tania are doing is they're doing the lead teacher work by day and they're doing leadership work at night. Um, Katie told me, she's like, I always wonder, am I like forgetting something? Because that to-do list as an administrator, which I recall, some fondness, but some trepidation, that's a long list. But they've really built something real. And I feel like as co-founders, they've achieved what their dream is. At least that's the way it looks to me. And I feel like Matt Kramer, as part of the Wildflower Network, is doing what he told me he dreamed of back in 2017. He's got now a network and his team, he and his team, the Wildflower team, they've got 70 schools like this across the US, these micro schools. All of them are teacher led. So, next up, our next episode, Curious Mike gets to interview Matt Kramer, the CEO of Wildflower. And I want to hear his take broadly on micro schools. I want to hear his take broadly on how his inclusion vision is going and how he's modernizing micro schools. I want to hear the full story, and I bet you do too. So please tune in for that.